He sat in the courtroom with a smug smile, acting like nothing in the world could touch him. He rolled his eyes at the evidence, mocked the judge to his face, and even tried to turn the hearing into an argument he thought he could win.
Part of it is, if we have a concern, what's the alternative? Because then if we might get into a situation under the law where I'm supposed to weigh the pros and the cons. Well,
because I can't. It's not a crime to smell.
it's not a crime to
Continue
smell,
what you were saying.
but it doesn't help you, all right, to irritate people.
All right.
And you have a lot at stake in this case.
It's not a crime to smell, is it?
I didn't say you were committing a
Okay
crime.
then.
I'm saying you're
Continue
not
what you were
helping
saying.
yourself.
Continue what you were saying.
I'm
I'm allowed
done.
to smell.
I would suggest
All right.
you do what helps
Okay.
you, not what hurts you.
Okay.
That's
Do what I
all.
want to do.
Well,
Let's
do
get
what
that
you want to do.
understood.
That's fine.
Let's get that understood.
I'm sorry.
Let's get that understood.
He looked untouchable, too confident, too calm, too sure that everyone else was the fool. But while he smirked his way through the trial, something he never expected was happening just outside that courtroom door. A friend, one who didn't want to go down for the same crime, finally broke the silence. And the moment that confession landed, his entire world shifted. The smile faded. The confidence cracked. Because the truth he thought would stay buried was finally coming for him. Brice Rhodes liked to call himself a rapper. He wore shiny shoes, loud jackets, and walked like the whole world should move out of his way. People in his neighborhood knew his name because he talked big, bragged big, and acted like nothing could ever hurt him. He was young, only in his 20s, but he loved showing off like he was already famous. When teenagers saw him, they thought he was cool. When grown-ups saw him, they felt something colder, something harder to explain. It was the way he stared at people, like he was always choosing who mattered and who didn't. He wasn't a superstar, but he wanted to be treated like one, and he liked being the center of everything, even when the things he was doing were getting darker every day. One night in May, everything changed. Brice sat inside a car with some boys who trusted him. They were young. They were excited just to be in the car with someone they believed could help them shine. But Brice wasn't thinking about music or fame. He was thinking about a man named Christopher Jones. Brice had decided this man was a target. He believed there was money on the man's head, and he acted like he knew everything and everyone. On that night, the car rolled through the street, slow but sure, with Brice sitting in the back seat. Then, without warning, the peace of the night broke. Shots rang out, people ducked, and Christopher Jones fell. Brice thought he had handled everything. He told himself he had done the right job. He told himself no one would ever question him. But two teenage brothers, Larry and Maurice, had seen what happened. They were only 14 and 16. They looked up to Brice. They knew what happened to Christopher. They talked about it because they didn't understand the weight of what they had seen. And when he heard that, something inside him snapped. He didn't see them as kids. He didn't see them as friends. He saw them as threats. And then he killed them both. When the two teenagers were gone, the house stayed silent. Brice walked through it, unaware that the remaining marks and stains were clear evidence. There were scratches on the floor, stains in the carpet, and items moved out of place. He believed cleaning, scrubbing, moving furniture, tossing clothes, hiding knives, and sending kids to burn the bodies behind an empty house would cover everything. It didn't. The mistakes stayed where he left them. Detectives entered days later. They examined the walls, floors, bathroom, and doorways. They photographed everything. They collected fingerprints, footprints, fibers, and smears on the floor. They noted paint patches and strong cleaning chemicals used in a rush. They recognized signs of violence immediately. At the burned lot, investigators found the boys' bodies inside melted totes. Clothing, rope, and belts remained. Fire had removed details, but not the facts. Detectives connected the scenes: the burned lot, the house, and Brice's car. With each step, the evidence grew, while Brice acted as if none of it mattered. The detectives wanted to understand who the boys had last been with. Everyone around the teenagers said the same name. They said the boys trusted Brice. They said the boys believed Brice would make them famous. They said the boys went to his home that night. They said the boys told people they saw something they should not have seen. They said Brice was angry at them. All these voices made detectives turn directly to him. Then they learned about the man killed weeks earlier. Christopher Jones had been shot in a drive-by. Neighbors told police the car looked familiar. Cameras on the street caught a vehicle that matched one Brice used. People said the teenagers were in that same car on the night Jones was attacked. They linked the shooting to the same circle of people who were with Brice every day. Police now had two crimes that touched each other, and both pointed toward the same man. The detectives started pulling Brice's phone records. They checked messages. They checked call logs. They used cell towers to see where his phone was at certain times. They saw movements that matched the crime scenes. They saw numbers he called right after both killings. They saw calls to the teenagers. They saw calls right before the bodies were burned. They saw messages that looked short and strange, like warnings. Every digital record made the story clearer. Inside his home, police collected knives, belts, and cleaning items. They gathered burned clothes from the abandoned house. They took parts of the melted totes. They took soil samples, ashes, burned fabric, and fingerprints. They also took Brice's shoes, which had small dark dots on them. They took his car again and looked at it for hours. They found fibers that matched the boy's clothes. They found hair that did not belong to Brice. They found marks that showed heavy things were dragged. Every clue connected to Brice, like a long rope stretching from one crime to another. When Brice was arrested, he did not act like a scared man. He acted like someone who thought rules were only for other people. He walked into every hearing with a stare that dared people to challenge him. He laughed when nothing was funny. He rolled his eyes when the judge talked. He started arguments whenever someone asked him a simple question. He spit at one of his lawyers and forced the court to put a mask on his face so he could not spit again. When judges warned him to behave, he said they were unfair. When prosecutors spoke, he said they were lying. When police gave testimony, he said they were framing him. One day, he yelled that a judge was part of the KKK. Another day, he said the prosecutor was trying to poison him. He tried to complain to the Bar Association about every attorney who did not agree with him. His behavior grew worse. He called people racists. He cursed at officers. He threatened to hurt people when he got out. He told the court he could beat the system. He acted like he was too smart to get caught, too loud to be ignored, too stubborn to follow rules. The judge had to give him a serious warning. If he caused any more trouble in front of the jury, he would be taken out of the room or forced to sit with an ankle cuff that could shock him. He still smiled like he controlled everything. But behind all of this noise, someone who once stood beside him was about to speak, and that voice would do more damage than anything else. One of the boys Brice trusted the most. Someone who slept in the same room the night the first killing happened. Someone who helped drive the car. Someone who wiped blood from the carpet. Someone who kept his mouth shut far longer than he should have. Eventually decided he was finished. He had already taken a plea deal. He was already looking at years behind bars. He had every reason to stay quiet, and every reason to be afraid. Brice Rhodes had made sure of that. In jail, Rhodes had passed him letters. Notes scribbled on paper, folded small, slid secretly from cell to cell, with one message printed in huge letters across the top. Rats get exposed. These weren't just warnings. They were threats. They were instructions. They were attempts to control the only person who knew the full truth. Inside, the letters were directions, written like a script. Rhodes told him to recant his police statement. He told him to deny everything. He listed excuses the boy could reuse, word for word, like lines in a performance. He told him to copy the letter in his own handwriting and then flush the original down the toilet. He told him not to take any plea offers. He told him the prosecution had nothing but he say, she say. He told him to stay loyal, and every time he signed the message with the same tone, brotherhood, manipulation, and warning mixed into one. In one letter he wrote, "Show me you my racial slur, and you not no rat." In another, he reminded him, "Between us, you know what you said. I got the paperwork." Rhodes was facing the death penalty, and he knew the only person who could destroy his defense was the boy he had threatened into silence. These notes became critical evidence. Investigators didn't just find threats, they found proof of witness tampering, obstruction, and intent. When the letters were turned over, detectives saw the entire plan laid out on paper. Rhodes had tried to undo the investigation from inside his cell. He had tried to control testimony, rewrite narratives, and intimidate anyone who might break. The letters matched the fear the boys had described in their police statements back in 2016. They matched the pattern of control, the violence, and the manipulation. They showed that Rhodes wasn't just trying to hide a crime, he was actively trying to silence every voice connected to it. Once the trial started, the courtroom filled with people who waited nearly 8 years for this moment. The jury sat in a long row. The judge watched Brice closely. Prosecutors brought out stacks of photos, physical items, videos, phone data, interviews, and old statements from every person involved. One by one, witnesses came forward. Police officers explained what they saw at the burned site. Crime scene specialists explained how the stains in the home matched the boy's blood. Medical experts explained the injuries. Detectives told the jury how phone records placed Brice near every crime scene at the right time. Scientists explained how fibers from the youth's clothes were found inside Brice's car. Officers described how Brice had tried to threaten or scare people into staying silent. Then, Brice's friend took the stand again and walked the jury through the night of the drive-by. Antoine Carter had been one of Rhodes's closest friends, someone who stayed in the same apartment, someone who saw the fear in those rooms, someone who lived under Rhodes's control. In December 2023, he stunned the courtroom when he took the witness stand and broke years of silence. His testimony was graphic and emotional, but it also filled in the final gaps investigators had been trying to connect. Carter told the jury that everything began weeks earlier, during the night of the drive-by shooting. He described exactly where he sat in the car, how Rhodes fired the gun, how Christopher Jones, an innocent man, was mistakenly killed, and how the 2 teenage boys witnessed the murder. Panic erupted afterward. Rhodes believed the teens might talk, and from that moment, the fear inside the apartment never went away. Carter then explained all the events one by one. The teens had been hanging out in the living room when an argument began. Maurice picked up a knife in a defensive moment, but Rhodes snatched it away, slapped him, and threatened to violate him. From there, the situation escalated fast. Carter said that Rhodes took full control, separating the boys, tying them up, gagging them, and forcing them into the bathroom while he gathered everyone in the living room for a chilling vote on whether the teens should live or die. Carter told the jury he was the only one who said no, but he was terrified. He felt trapped, alone, and certain he would become the next victim if he argued too hard. He then gave a full account of the murders. Maurice was tied, gagged, and forced to his knees while Rhodes punched him in the chest before stabbing him repeatedly in the torso. Maurice tried to make noise, but the gag stopped everything except muffled breaths as he bled out onto the sheets placed beneath him. Larry was brought out next with a belt binding his hands, a hat pulled over his eyes, and a sock shoved into his mouth. He didn't know his brother was already dead until he felt the blood on the floor and panicked. Carter said Larry tried to fight even while restrained, but Rhodes stabbed him again and again until he collapsed and stopped moving. After both teens were killed, Carter said Rhodes made sure no one could run to the police. He passed the knife around and forced everyone to stab one of the boys, telling them they were all now part of it. Terrified, Carter admitted he stabbed Larry under pressure. The bodies were wrapped in sheets, stuffed into plastic totes, loaded into a car, and taken to an abandoned house where they were burned. When investigators later found the remains, they were so badly damaged that no one knew Carter had been holding the truth the entire time. Carter explained that he kept quiet because Rhodes controlled everyone with fear. He had nowhere to go, no one to trust, and believed speaking up would get him killed. But the guilt became unbearable. In court, He told the jury he could no longer carry the weight of knowing exactly how the teens died. He admitted that he could have walked away that night, but didn't, and he could have spoken earlier, but was afraid. Every detail matched something already in evidence. The prosecutors did not need dramatic speeches. The story spoke for itself. The photos of the burned lots spoke. The melted totes spoke. The cuts on the boys' clothes spoke. The blood traces on the floor spoke. The fingerprint matches spoke. The jailhouse letters spoke. The history of outbursts spoke. Everything built a wall around Brice that he could not climb out of. The defense tried to argue that police made mistakes. They said Brice had mental problems. They said he was confused. They said he was not the one who acted alone. But the pile of evidence was so solid and so wide that every attempt to shake it fell apart within minutes. By the time the last witness finished, the jury already knew the answer. The jury had barely taken their seats before they were called back into the courtroom. Everyone expected long hours of discussion, but less than 60 minutes after leaving, they returned with the decision that would define the rest of Brice Rhodes' life. The defense tried to soften the blow. They asked the jury to consider Rhodes' mental illness, his trauma, his low IQ, and the difficult life he had come from. They argued he should not be defined solely by the horrific acts laid out in court. But the jury had already made up their minds. On December 18th, 2023, the jury delivered their verdict, and in March 2024, the judge sentenced him to life in prison with no possibility of release. For the first time in the entire trial, the courtroom witnessed something unusual from Rhodes: silence. But another part of the story unfolded during sentencing, one that revealed the weight carried by the families of the victims, and even by the people who once cared about Rhodes. Deborah Ann, the grandmother of Larry Ordway, and Morris Gordon, stood before the jury, fighting back tears. 7 years and 7 months had passed since her life changed forever. She talked about the boys' basketball games, their birthdays, their Christmases, the small, ordinary moments that build a family. All of it ripped away in 2016. Sean Jones, brother of Christopher Jones, spoke for the first time as well. He told the court how Christopher would never get the chance to watch his sons grow, to raise his daughter, or to even meet his granddaughter. The losses were permanent, the pain lifelong. Prosecutors reminded the jury of Rhodes' long criminal record stretching back to 2009, domestic violence, armed robbery, assault, parole violations. To them, the murders were not an accident or a moment of chaos. They were the latest and worst escalation in a violent pattern. But the defense pushed back, presenting a different image of Rhodes, one shaped by hardship, abuse, and a troubled mind. His stepmother spoke about the cognitive struggles he had since childhood, the gaps in processing and memory, the intellectual disability she believed went untreated for years. She explained how she tried to get him evaluated, how she wanted him to receive help, but his biological mother resisted. The family conflict pulled Rhodes away from the stability he needed. She shared happier memories too, small reminders that Rhodes had once been loved, once been reachable. "We've always been connected," she said softly. "I love Brice." Despite these pleas, the jury remained firm. And as the courtroom prepared to close the chapter on Rhodes' life, another sentence was delivered. This time to the young man whose testimony broke the silence. Because he came forward and exposed the truth, Antoine Carter received a reduced sentence of 10 years, with the possibility of early release for good behavior. The judge acknowledged that Carter participated under fear, but made it clear to the court that his decision to speak was the only reason justice finally arrived. Thanks for watching. If you like this story, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.